So you can do both,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you may begin.
All right, so hello, my name is Colton Martinez, and, which are you gonna go?
I thought you were, I was just gonna close this out, so. But, if you don't mind.
Let's see what everyone says. All right.
Okay, all right. My name is Ruben Littledog.
My name is Jerry Leroy. My name is Tony Ladser.
And our topic question for discussion is, how has human trafficking affected Native American people? It originally was, how was human trafficking affected Fort Berthold, but that one was a little condensed, kind of hard to find good topics on it, or any sources. So we brought in it a bit, how it affected Native Americans as a whole. And let's begin with participant one.
What did you do?
Oh, the definitions, I forgot about the definitions. So, has, possesses, one more. Oh, how. How, in what way or manner, by what means? Has, oh yeah, so introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Charnel Perez.
Okay, so, definitions, how, in what way or manner, by what means, has, possesses, owns, or holds, or to be in possession of, affected, influenced, or touched by an external factor, Native American, associated with a place or circumstance of both of a person's birth, people, human beings in general or considerably collectively, human trafficking, the illegal practice of procuring or trading in human beings for the purposes of prostitution, forced labor, and other forms of exploitation. And now we go on to our summaries.
Mine is on the human trafficking of reform school, because that's what we did at the beginning, so that's what I found. So, human trafficking came to the Fort Berthold Reservation when the oil boom hit. It brought oil workers, brought oil workers that started spending their monies at the bar and the casinos. They went there for jobs because they had high-paying jobs. And when they started going to the bars and to the casinos, this is where a lot of the trafficking started. The casino, I keep catching myself. The casino is where a lot of the trafficking happened. There was two women, Youngbird and Chelsea Snyder. They said that around the area, no one really knew about trafficking. The people on the reservations were fairly new to this. They didn't really understand what it was. They didn't know really that they were being trafficked. A lot of people thought that they were being prostituted. They felt that they had the choice to do it. But according to the legal definition, from what they said, it says anyone who is forced, coerced, or deceived into having commercial sex is being trafficked. I can't say it. Trafficked. Along with the people, there was adult females, males, and along came with that was the teenagers. The teenagers were starting to get into it. And there were some even as young as 12 years old that were getting into it. They would go to house parties. They were getting lured with house parties, and they were getting lured to these people's places, and they were the pimps that were doing it, that were selling them and raping them and kind of forcing them into the trafficking. And they went and they told them that if they didn't go out and raise them $200, that they would tell their parents and take pictures of them and show them what they're doing and kind of like blackmail them to do this. So they felt like they had no choice, that they had to go about and do this for them because they didn't want their parents to find out what they were doing, as they didn't feel like their parents would understand. And then when they were taken to these house parties, they were given alcohol and drugs and just kind of to hinder their mind frame. And then it started trickling into the schools. The teachers and the adults, they started noticing that these young women were coming into the schools with really nice things, with iPhones, with luxuries, and they're trying to figure out how they're getting these. And as they started to research the trafficking, they started finding out that these pimps and stuff are buying them these nice things in order to have them stay. And as it went on, the North Dakota legislature started catching on to that these were happening, and that they started noticing that they needed to do something about this trafficking because it's starting to become a big thing now. So then they started what was it called? An Anti-Trafficking Law. And they passed it for the state of North Dakota, but however, it didn't affect the Fort Rinco Reservation because they couldn't implement that law because they had no laws to follow up on it. So then it took a group of women who actually took a stance, and they started finding their ways of how they could make their own laws for the legislation in order for them to implement it onto their reservation. And this was by Krista Hillstrom and Kayla Webley, and I found it on the EBSCO, and it was called A Tribe's Quest.
So, my article is on the Suquamish Reservation in Washington. There was 9 people arrested that were believed to be part of the human trafficking ring on the reservation. There was 8 women and 1 man that were arrested. There were while they were investigating this, there was a lot of agencies around the area involved, the Missing and Exploited Children's Task Force, the Suquamish Tribal Police Department, and the Poolsville Police Department. It was suspected that the man that was arrested was driving these women to meet men and sell them for drugs. The man was caught when an undercover cop that was part of this operation met with him. They had arranged for the cop to meet with a woman, and the man who delivered her was arrested at the Suquamish Clearwater Casino and Resort. So it was happening at the casino too, and the hotel on this reservation varies. Apparently the undercover cops were speculating that the women that were involved in this were being forced by violence to engage in the prostitution. All of the women that were arrested were of legal age, but they didn't know when they got put into human trafficking, at what age it started for them. According to an officer involved with this issue on the reservation, said that we take this issue very seriously. And he stated that while their numbers were high, it was indicative of the complexity of the issue, which brought in a lot of fear for the women on the reservation, and a lot of them were scared because they felt like there wasn't really a lot being done about it. Yeah. My article was by Brian Grimley and Chris Henry, and I found it on ProQuest.
So my turn. For many years now, there's been lots of human trafficking cases that have been popping up in many different Native American reservations. Native Americans have been considered to be the more vulnerable populace. The reason being that there are more cases of poverty, rape, and sexual violence. all of which contributes to the number of human trafficking cases being present in and around reservations. One cause of this is the recent surge of fracking in the oil industry booming in and around North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. So with that, there has been lots of man camps built up to house workers and whatnot, since these areas are in remote areas or whatever. And then these areas are very unsupervised, extremely unsupervised, so there's lots of alcohol, drugs, and prostitution, all of which can be leading into bad cases. Such cases are human trafficking. Let's see here. Within these camps, there's high demand for sex, you know. So with the lack of supervision from the higher-ups, the rise of sex trafficking in the areas became high. So men are out there looking for young women to prey upon at like casinos, bars, anywhere that there's lack of cops to be. Not to mention there are many jurisdictions between tribal and state laws which can cause loopholes, and sometimes it can create cracks that can fall through. So as an example, let's say that there is a non-Native American man working the sex trafficking ring. He can get away scot-free if he's working in the reservation. He can get arrested, but they'll have to let him go eventually because it falls under the state's jurisdiction. There's a lot of holes, a lot of loopholes. And it allows them to work risk-free, or a little risk. There's a little risk, but essentially risk-free with these individuals. So the article I got this from is Human Trafficking Search, and the article is Trafficking in Tribal Nations, the Impact of Sex Trafficking on Native Americans. The author, there's no name. So I'm assuming that it was a cumulative of a bunch of people that came together and worked on this very article that I found. And in this article, they bring up a name called Cindy McCain, who have witnessed some of these human trafficking events. Like, see right here. She witnessed one night at a casino, there was a bunch of women lined up, and they were being, you know, chosen, let's just say, for their special qualities and features or whatever, by men just looking for a good night. And she did not like this at all, because, well, obvious reasons. So, I want to say that's it as a problem. It's all right.
Hey everyone, I did my research on a bill actually, and what it was called was the Executive Order 14053, and what it talks about is improving public safety and criminal justice for Native Americans and addressing the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people. And it stated that Native Americans face a higher violence than like the national average. It also mentions that Native Americans survivors of human trafficking and sexual assault. And when this bill came into place, it was literally last year. So could you just think about that? We have had this happening for so long, and we are just now getting help with it. But it literally took place on November 15th, 2021. But there's also another article that I found that said it took place on the 18th, but I went with the 15th because it was on this, it was on, it was on a bill with the president, so. It also talks about how Native Americans we've had, what?
National Action Plan?
Yeah.
It was just said in December of last year.
Anyway, it talks about the Native Americans' generational traumas such as sexual assault on women, our Native women, our missing and murdered loved ones, and human trafficking. And as far as the human trafficking, in the early months of 2021, the Secretary of the Interior and Attorney General announced a joint commission. They came up with an act called the Not Invisible Act. It includes the representatives of tribal, state, and local law enforcement, tribal judges, Native American human trafficking survivors, healthcare and mental health practitioners who had experience working with Native American human trafficking survivors. In the section 2 of the bill, it would call, in section 2 of this order, it's called the coordination of the federal law enforcement strategy to prevent and respond to the violence against Native Americans. The strategy will provide, was to provide coordinations among the Department of Justice, the Department of Interior, Department of Homeland Security in efforts to end human trafficking. And it was also set to strengthen and expand the Native American participation in the Amber Alert for American Indian country, build and enhance national training programs for federal agents and prosecutors. And the Attorney General and the Department of Interior were given 250 days of the date to come up with a developed strategy, identify additional resources. And section 4, it talks about the Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, and Secretary of Health and Human Services. They must coordinate in efforts to improve data collection and information sharing practices and conducting outreach and training and promoting accurate and timely access to information. Oh, that was a mouthful. Okay. Okay, and then, but it was all to help the Native American human trafficking victims, survivors. And I had another note card, but I think I dropped it somewhere from there to here. So, that was
You did a good job.
Thank you.
So for mine, my article was actually what Jerry read. Because like she said, it was the first article I came across, but I read it and yeah, what was it? I got from that article the Fort Worth been affected by drug and sex trafficking for over 12 years to the point of distress. Individuals as young as 12 have been hurt, abused by the system for money. There are people who try hard to help their people through finding ways for government to hear their distress and keep the reservation safe. This was the first reservation to impacted by sex trafficking that the FBI had to step in, even though the ins and outs were turmoil. People were convicted on the matter, yet it still doesn't mean anything because it's not just going to stay okay. President Biden implemented As you said, the National Action Plan in December, I think it was on like the 21st of last year, specifically for sex trafficking, and it was actually for jobs, gender, and a lot of other things. But I hope that it works to the extent it's intended for the sake of everyone involved, impacted, concerned, and against the wrong at fault. These articles on the news don't get heard because of unconcerned people or the ignorance at large and in charge. These families of the children and everybody that was impacted does not deserve to be put to the side without justice. And everybody was saying it was just women. It wasn't, it was everybody. I mean, when it's one of us, it's all of us. So I'm hoping it doesn't just go without justice. Human traffickers, like evil in the world, are not going to stay away. All everybody gets is a slap on the wrist and let go. But this is basically Native against government, and this has been going on for years. And it's about money. And this is to the point where our ancestors were trying to take our land back, and their land is being affected now to this day. It may not be the same people, but it's a different reservation. And nonetheless, we're all Native Americans, and they feel like they can take advantage of us because we have treaties, and they want to try to get one over on us and take everything that they said and make something up and then turn it into something else and go years upon years and not ever justify any of their wrongdoings. And that's all I have to say.
All right. It says I am participant 6, but my name is Ruben Little Dog. So I did my little segment here on the Native American people of New Mexico. However, human trafficking doesn't just affect just the Native American people. Of all ethnic regions, it affects everybody and everyone around us. So I would like to thank everybody by allowing us to share with you our take on human trafficking. So a little fun fact, child marriage is actually only banned in 6 states of the United States as of 2018, which is kind of relative to what we're talking about, because human trafficking doesn't just apply to sex exploitation, nor selling to others for labor or anything like that, for free hard labor. People get sold to other people for the point of them to be bought just to have them. And nobody ever knows what happens to these people after they are bought. They're lost forever. And in the year 2020, 41 unsolved cases of human trafficking happened just in New Mexico alone. And of those reported cases, just about half of them were Native Americans, because there's a lot of tribes in New Mexico, and there's also a lot of groups of people that are targeted because of poverty. And if you are labeled under poverty, then you're going to be looked at the most. And a lot of numbers are accumulated yearly, and most don't know that certain actions are being taken, not just by the state, but by the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is the BIA. And they have their own branch in the U.S. government to help prevent such things from happening. Most of the local government try to prevent things from happening under these laws and restrictions and such, but nothing's going to stop human traffickers from taking people from their homes, taking people from stores, taking people in broad daylight. Some of this stuff happens and nobody ever realizes that it does, and when it does, there's nothing that can be done about it except let's send out an Amber Alert. Let's go ahead and raise awareness. If you're raising awareness to prevent such things from happening, wouldn't you just try yourself to be a little bit more aware? Certain guidelines, certain things that you can do, small things like, you know, telling your kids not to go out after a certain time, posting curfews, having somebody go with you to the grocery store, a friend, somebody who has GPS tracking on their phone. Everybody carries a phone with them around, and not many people realize that if a human trafficker takes you, they're going to take all of your belongings, throw them in the trash, and that's going to be the end of you, and nobody's ever going to find you. So a lot of things can be done by people every single day to help things, to help prevent these things. And it's not all up to our government, it's up to us to help stop these people from taking our women, our children, our friends, our family. I know that if I had a daughter, that I would stop at nothing to get her back. If my mother was taken, I'd stop at nothing to get her back. These people that are taken are targeted because they don't have any family. They don't have any friends. They don't have anything to label them as worth being taken back by the people. In New Mexico, the federal government and the BIA working constantly and conjointly to work against this have created such policies to help in the action of making things more aware to people, not in just the state of New Mexico, not just, you know, in the state of Texas or in Arizona, along the lines of the border, but as a nation. Because you have states like Oregon that are being taken across the border up in the north, here in North Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, everywhere that you can get deported back from the U.S. to taken over the border, they are working day and night. They are making sure that no women, men, or children are taken, you know, to make sure that we are all protected as one nation, under one people. And it's affected the Native American people very, very impactfully, I'd say, because there's not much none of us can do about it. There's not much that's, if somebody's taken from a man camp in Fort Berthold, you're not going to know unless they come up dead in the newspaper next week, you know? Certain things need to be taken seriously, and certain things that come up on your phone, such as an Amber Alert, can be taken very, very seriously. If you see somebody on the road that looks like the person that was taken, you act immediately. You call 911 or you call a hotline. These things are in order for us to make sure that these things don't happen. The U.S. government has a lot of things that prevent such things from happening, and the only solution that I can provide at the moment is just as an individual to make sure that we are protecting our children, our men, our women, our friends, our family. Everybody is important. Nobody is left out. The full gravity of the situation of human trafficking is really not to be taken lightly, and it's, like I said before, it is a very serious situation. I think we can all agree that there is somebody out there that is more worth taking back from these types of people that just spread these heinous crimes and to exploit people for their weaknesses. And just like these guys said up here, it doesn't just happen just in New Mexico, just in Fort Berthold. It happens all over the world, it happens all over our nation, happens all over our reservations. And that's what I got for my presentation, is just to let you guys know.
And now we will go to the Q&A. As audience members, as you listen to each group discussant, that's a word. Was there one particular that stuck out for you? So we'll take questions from each of you, since our class is smaller today.
The BIA, whenever they're up in for trafficking, they, the BIA has more authority than the tribal cops and the cops itself, right? Yeah, they're able to, more authority.
Good. Yes.
What is a man cam?
Oh, man camp?
I'm so glad you don't know.
Okay, so there's a bunch of like oil workers or fraction workers all put into this little area out in wherever.
They have a drilling
Usually a
site,
remote
they have a
area.
drilling site, and where they drill at, they have a little trailers and stuff where the workers come and stay.
And they stay there.
Basically where they
you know.
live.
Isn't there a movie?
They work 12 days.
There's a
12
movie.
days.
Yeah, it was on Netflix, I can't remember what it was called.
I can't remember what it's called either, because when I first saw that, that put a lot into perspective, and I'm glad how Nelly brought up that bill, because it's been happening this long, that it took our people to say something. And I think the biggest thing is to put into that too, is not when you find out someone's dead. I will circulate a woman's picture for years, you will not stop me, and plenty of the tribal people in the last 2 years have done that. We are searching for our people regardless of whether the BIA is involved or not. So hearing that you chose that law and to focus on that, everybody did a good job, but that law right there is saying, guess what? It's enough, we're coming, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to get heated. I tried to tone it down, but you know, it is important. Because even
It's a
on
serious
TikTok, they teach little kids signs. If I'm in a bar and I'm having a problem, you go and you order an angel shot. That person will take you behind the bar. So there's TikToks, there's little things that we can do. And it's not just Amber Alerts. It's not, because our people do matter. It doesn't matter the poverty level or not. This is still part of colonization after how many years of our people?
And as it's going
hearing
into
about
today,
it?
you have to teach your kids that. I mean, you have to literally teach your kids that, you know, somebody tries to take you, you gotta scream and whatever they have to do to get out of it, you know. You have to teach them, if they have phones, where those find the phone things are, you know. You have to literally
Well,
teach
it's
them
it's
all
only
this
been,
stuff.
100 years since Native Americans have been living this way. Our grandfather's grandfather, you know, 2 or 3 generations back, that's when everything kind of happened for us. So we're just getting used to things. It's harder for
Yeah.
us, especially splitting us up, trying to make us have our own sovereignty for the fact of everything that happens on the res stays on the res, for a fact like that saying, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But it's a joke, but yeah, it's not really, it's a joke that kind of really stuck with Native Americans for a fact of, oh, I can do whatever I want on the res,